very happy to see you all here. This is the first lecture of our advanced networking program. And I'm extremely pleased to have introduce Abdur Chowdhury, who spent a couple of years here in the late 90s working with us on computer integrated manufacturing and system cloud, which have become now a very popular topic. And then he left, and he got very much involved with Twitter, with two other folks from here, Biography and Sandra Paul. And he became the chief scientist of Twitter. And then he quit Twitter about 18 months ago, and now he has something even more exciting, at least to my own interest, where he gets involved with elementary school education and using all kinds of technologies and ideas that come from information technology. So we're very happy to have you here, and he's going to talk to us today about challenges in building human networks. In the afternoon, at 2 o'clock, we're going to have an informal roundtable, and he'll be here the whole day, so if you want to meet with him, just let him or me know, and he'll have to talk to you. You have the floor, and welcome again.
Thanks. Hello. I like interactive talks, so please talk to me. So my name's Abdur. As John said, I was here in the late 90s as a lab manager like yourself. It was a lot of fun. I left, finished my PhD at IIT, went to AOL after a brief stint at Georgetown teaching, mostly because I was enamored by impact. And so when you talk about people and why do they feel valued about what they're working on, it's because other people value that work. And every time I'd write a paper, like 20 people might reference it, 5 might read it. Like, it was very unsatisfying, and I really wanted to build stuff that impacted the world. It is, it's frustrating, it's really frustrating. And then when they suddenly John, he's like, look, I was talking about this 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, and you're like, yes, I know, this is really, really tough. But after that, I started a company called Surmise. We thought 3 things were important: real-time search, summarization, and sentiment analysis. We later merged with Twitter in 2008, mostly because we had a very good real-time search engine. There was like 14 of them and 5 of us. And I took on the role as chief scientist. I built like most of the spam systems, the analytics team, all the recommendation stuff, search, and a few other things there. And my next passion was education. I have a daughter, and education is broken, so there's 2 things you can do. You can bitch about it, or you can go fix it. So we started an elementary school focused on science and math, specifically critical thinking, because by the time we get to college, critical thinking is too late. We've either learned it or not, and I think we need to start earlier. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today. Today I want to talk about really human beings and why they're the most challenging thing in networks. Like, I have come to the belief now that any networking problem or any problem, I can go hire enough people and work on it if I actually understand what that problem is. But I still don't understand human beings. Yeah, if it's important enough, you'll have enough money. This is another thing I learned, is that if you have a big enough problem and you're making enough progress on it, there are people that will get you the money. Anyway.
So if that's the case, how come sometimes you say the right thing and it only takes off 10 years later?
Check this out. Just doing it on an iPad mini. Well, there's no new ideas. There's the right time for ideas. Stop. So what do I?
You wanted to read that?
I do. He beat me up for many years. Every time I thought I knew something, John would show me that I did not. Anyway, so let's talk about human networks. Internet today. Roughly 1.5 billion computers, right? Only 2.4 billion people are online, right? 200 million. Internet connected devices. Yes.
So that means that people share computers.
Yes, they do. Yeah. In fact, if you go to places like India, you'll see like one computer for the whole village. Like if you look at this demographic in this room, highly educated, very affluent, right? We're not the norm of the world. So yeah, you probably have 5 computers. John has 50. Maybe more.
Let's ask the question, what percentage of the American population, forget the rest of the world, geographically and numerically, is actually connected in a broadband with the internet? What do you? No.
Broadband?
Broadband.
Pew just released a study that 70% of homes in America are connected, have broadband connection, according to a Pew study.
So, I think it's less than that.
It's about 25%. It's in big cities what we're talking about, but that's why they started 2 years ago this big program to create broadband connectivity to rural areas and underdeveloped areas. There's a lot of people that don't have broadband connection. They may have some connection, but not broadband. If you don't have broadband connection, I mean, you cannot download multimedia, images, screening, and all that stuff. So, yeah, you can send email, but that's not very good education knowledge. And if you go to other parts of the world, they're all blessed. And there are some parts of the world, like Sweden, with 9% everywhere.
So how's this world going to change? This is the question that's been going through my head, because I want to figure out what the next interesting thing to work on is. We talked about how do people find value. I personally find value in working on things that I think are going to impact the world in a positive way. And so I've been asking myself, well, how do I actually start thinking about this? How is this landscape going to change? And the one thing that started to strike me was the biggest change that we're seeing in the last 40 years has been education. So in 1974, 70s, there was roughly 4 billion people on this planet. And the literacy rate was about 40%. In the last 40 years, we've moved the literacy rate to about 85%. Illiteracy rate. Can read and write.
So simply that.
Simply that, right? So when I ask this question,
It's specifically Roman letters, because like, I think, but I'm not sure, like, Chinese characters are maybe much harder, for instance, to be able to be literate, considering the sheer number.
could be, but I think there's still only like a couple thousand characters they need to learn, just like words.
So you can be literate in that sense, but functionally literate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just basic reading and writing. No, you might not even have finished elementary school. Like, we're just looking at that. And my question really comes down to, like, who are fundamentally the people that could join the internet, right? You have to be able to at least read, right? Maybe not. So this is an amazing fact. Look, we have moved in the last 40 years, we've doubled the population, and we moved from, roughly 40% down to 15% illiteracy. And if you think about this, that track is going to continue. If you look at the education level for illiteracy, you see the United States, most of Europe, highly literate. Okay? You look at the places that aren't, and what sticks out is China, India, Central and South America in terms of population. Africa, it's a disaster. Right? It's a disaster. I just spent a week in Ethiopia. These people don't even have clean water. Like, it is going to be a really long time. It's an amazing country. I really recommend anyone doing it. It was the first third world country I've ever been to that I saw in those thousands around. Really, really beautiful. Let's think about the next thing. Right now, we have about 80% of the world's population has a cell phone. And we were just talking about SMS and Twitter. Twitter works on SMS. That's why it gets huge market penetration in places where, guess what? They don't have smartphones. They don't have a computer. but they now all of a sudden can communicate with the world, right? 94 million people have a smartphone in the US. Pretty amazing. 1 in 4. Right? So what's going to change? Like, how do you see this this playing out? Like, I'm really interested in how the world's going to change. What's going to happen? And this is how I think it's going to play out in the next 7 to 10 years. By 2020, we estimate we're going to have 8 billion people. I bet we can get that literacy rate up to about 90% of the population. I think we are going to change that ratio of smartphones from 1 in 5 to 4 in 5. And the reason is when you look at the production, that these companies are always building for the most profitable phones, which are the expensive ones, and they sell the cheaper ones 5, 10 years old. Now we've had smartphones for years now. So if you think about it, the cheapest phones are going to be the smartphones of today. So guessing that most of the world is going to have a smartphone doesn't seem like an unrealistic or crazy analogy. We're going to have huge, huge new markets in India, China, and South America. In fact, what I'm going to see is that the internet, as we know it today, is going to change fundamentally from being affluent people to being people that are barely literate and don't have much money. In fact, if you look at that number, it's going to be about 5.7 billion people. Sorry, I already have it there. So we have 2.4 billion people online today. We're going to double that. The demographics and usage of the internet is fundamentally going to change in the next decade. The only thing I can see slowing this down and making it from 7 years to 15 years or even 10 years is our ability to put infrastructure in some of these third world countries like India. Right? It's the only thing I see slowing us down. This trend is going to happen. We can argue whether it's 7 or 10 years, but I can't see any other way through. What do you think about like an internet that's going to change that much? I was hoping.
What are you going to do with it?
What are you going to do with it? Exactly.
You can do,
I know what I'm
what
going
do
to
they
do.
say? Internet is a wonderful thing, but it's also a very bad thing for everyone.
Why is it a bad thing, John?
What's a bad thing?
You said what's a bad thing?
Because it's, nobody wants to be in what big numbers is up there? In a 5.7 billion city where there may be a lot of bad neighborhoods. I don't know when the bad neighborhood is about or not. That's why.
A lot of false information. We see it now, it's going to grow.
Corruption, crime, all kinds of stuff, right?
So in other words, things like scammers would just explode or what?
I think much more serious things will explode, and they're exploding. You just don't see them all. So,
If you have a different demographic, then the users are going to be less educated, so they're not going to be able to tell the difference between spam and not spam.
it's
I think
not
it's one of many of the
not
problems.
spam I'm worried about. I'm worried about serious crimes.
Yeah. I'm not worried about that. I'm more interested in the opportunities.
Yeah, I was gonna say, on the other hand,
Certain people.
There's always
Crime
opportunities.
is opportunity for.
I'm looking at the world like, how is it going to change and how do I get in the right place?
My serious question will come at the end, but
but
More importantly, how are we all here going to be in the right places to like help shape this?
yeah, I was gonna say, on the other hand, you have people now, just like the way, printing press and distribution of information via books and literacy rates have allowed people who are in places where they could now dream about getting out of them, right? You now have access to information which allows you to pull you up by your bootstraps and make your way out of these places.
I think all kinds of great things are going to happen. I can see no downside for humans for having access to other humans and being able to communicate. Most of the things that have slowed us down over time was communication and middlemen. And freeing us from that is going to be all amazing.
is Twitter a middleman or not? Is Google a middleman or not?
Yes.
Ah,
Yes.
You can measure it. We'll come there, slowly.
The middlemen change. But they always get their money.
Yeah, but the point is that, okay, you have too many networks now that they are couple of them, and they interact in ways that they aren't good.
Yes.
I mean, economic, social, communication, internet, all kinds of stuff. And we just start understanding the implications of these couplings and the consequences.
I don't
Some
think-
of them are extremely good, some of them are pretty scary.
I don't think we understand them.
So we start investigating.
We're just starting to investigate. We're starting to realize that there are serious questions.
Yeah, I'm with you, I mean, I'm not against it, it's just I'm saying, there are some things that have to be added before we can always say, oh, this is paradise.
I'm just walking you through my thought process of like asking myself, what should I go spend time on? Right?
Education is good.
Well, education's one of my things that I do, but I've got a great headmaster and great teachers, and I don't have to focus on that all the time. I can focus on other things. I think education is such a daunting problem that trying to solve for the world is next to impossible. And there's many, it's not clear what the objective function is in many places.
Yeah, I'm not sure for the world. My theory is that
I'm solving it for a few hundred
Yeah,
kids.
so hopefully the good things will be integrated and the bad things will be decaying. But definitely this is the time where education is very dramatic.
It's changing.
Because of from it.
So my next question in my mind was like, how do we people interact with these devices? And here's a company called Flurry. Anyone familiar with Flurry or Mixpanel? They are analytics tools that people can hook up to their application. And so if you have an iPhone or an Android device, you can just like use this API and get the analytics, the flow, how your apps is used. But the cool thing is then they collect this aggregate knowledge and can give other things back. And this is from their blog. It's kind of fun to read. But it's really a breakdown of how are these devices being used. Not shocking, 32% are games, right?
In China it's 80%. 80% is more startup. I'm not bad. I was there several times this year, okay?
Yeah.
They subsidize, 8% of the companies they subsidize, they make games. And actually bad games, gambling games.
Yeah.
This is, as you said, it's a sample from the users that have downloaded that.
No, many apps. So they are just an analytics company.
So how reflective of what's really out there?
You know, I have learned over the years, you may or may not ever believe me, that the law of large numbers works. And then by the time you have a couple billion samples, that you are, oh, yeah, these guys have billions.
Was he the professor that you were saying you was great in field theory?
No.
I would avoid no comments.
I've given that, like, I've had this discussion many times, because like,
No, I'm
you know, a
curious.
large company, you do experiments on humans all the time. But like, you use 1 million people. Like, you're like, look, sampling bias is out, like random distribution, 1 million people, you figure out some.
Yeah, but if 1 million people from the West Coast is not the same thing as 1 million people across India.
It's not, maybe not. Maybe humans are more similar than you think. Depends on what you're testing. Depends on what you're testing.
Well, right, and as you said yourself, the penetration rate of high-end technologies.
It's very different, yeah. But right now, this is today. This is today. This is today. I think it is very reflective of the smartphone usage today.
So if you go around, this is the percentage
Yeah.
so they are investing.
Yeah. So quickly, let's go through the big ones. Games 30%, Facebook 18%, entertainment 8%, utilities 8%, social networking 6%, news 2%, productivity 2%, other 6%, Safari 12%, Android native, Opera Mini 2%, 4%.
Okay, so where is education?
It's not on there, which is really sad.
I know.
But this is the usage
Are you
of these
saying
devices.
that percent 10 years from now, is that your goal? And put at least 5% of education there, measurable?
That would be a great goal. That would be a great goal. Humans, I don't think, like actually learning. We're just sadists in this room. So let's look at this. So there's a dramatic change right now in that the web usage has changed. And the trend is to using optimized interactions that only you can do on this phone. You see that swipe gesture? How do you do that on the web? You don't. You use a browser that's doing that. Right? You can literally see that the usage of the internet has changed dramatically. People are using apps rather than just surfing the web. We do a little bit. In fact, I think that's why Facebook is so high, because mostly they're going through to other pages via it. But still, where do you think like the biggest opportunities are still going to be in this? Like John thought it might be in our education. Maybe we want to change that to 5%. But I think like if we sit back and think about these different ways we're going to start doing things or get opportunity, that they're always going to be around 3 different areas. The first is new collaboration modes. How do we bring human beings to like do something else together? The second is going to be ways to create new knowledge, which is very similar to collaboration. And the third is new marketplaces that will come online. I don't think that that graph is representative of where the opportunities are. Because people playing games, guess what? If they don't bring people together in a new and interesting way, they're just sucking up their time. Right? It's just a waste of bandwidth, power, food, everything. Right? Games are great in various other ways. We can use games to teach people. But if it's just like keeping them entertained, I don't think that that's a huge market opportunity. I think it's a very difficult business to get into. But I do think that if we can find new ways to collaborate, new ways to create knowledge and information, and new marketplaces, we've actually done something for all those new internet users. All right? No?
The 3 areas, right?
What?
The 3 areas where a lot of people are putting emphasis on.
I think so, and the reason
There are
people...
3. The one is making people more aware of what environmental issues is in a correct way, and participate and collaborate in keeping the environment better. Second is how do you make people collaborate themselves and with others on help, and the third one is education.
I think that those are all the positive ways that we should get people to work together. I totally agree.
And they have huge markets, right?
Yeah.
You need them.
I do believe it.
Have you considered about the constraint on time resources? Because everyone has 24 hours.
Yeah,
Usually
yeah.
they have something to do.
I have looked at time a lot. So you have 24 hours. You've got to sleep for 8. You have to work and feed your family. Let's call that another 8. You have to commute and do other things. When you start to actually look at the amount of resources that every human being has, it's probably 2 or 3 hours a day. If you think of like, you can think about this problem another way. You could say, well, how fast is the human brain?
You shouldn't say that. Because you're putting everything I said to my students.
Well, I told you earlier. I think I told you. You guys like, he's like, they made me work during the day. I was like, but you have nights and weekends. Okay.
Isn't the promise of the internet, according to several CEOs, that it takes away the commute and the location issue?
It could. They're still got to work, right? Maybe they're not spending their time commuting.
And let's say 3 hours. Can I go on and say more? So you have actually more?
Maybe. That would be great. So let's think about it in terms of compute power. Fastest computer now is about 150,000 MIPS. Human brain's about 100 million MIPS. We got 8 billion humans. We got 1.5 billion computers. We want to bring all that compute power online and actually get it working on things. So how much of each computer do we get to use? We might get 2 or 3 hours of work out of it, and that would be optimal. Right? And so we can think about what are all the amazing things we can do with it. Computers are great ways of correlating or collating information, but they're horrible at creativity and other things.
You said about the human networks and about the new collaboration models. Did you take into account, for example, the social changes like the revolution that happened in Arab Revolution? Because it was something that started with Twitter and Facebook, and it was very massive, and you have to capture also this thing.
Yeah, I
And
think
a lot
that
of people they are working on this, and how they are changing in the same
Well, I think it's just the information flow. You're no longer able to hide anything on this planet, right? I had this argument with many news organizations because they would be like, we're into late breaking news, we hate Twitter, we hate this, we hate this. I said, look, unless you're gonna go hire a couple 100 million reporters, late breaking news is no longer your job. Every one of us is now a censor on this network. You know what? When the tsunami hit, you could see every single tweet going out and people's communication coming in and out. When you look at like bin Laden being killed, guess what? Flows out. You cannot hide information. Scott McNeely, who started Sun Microsystems, got a great quote. Information wants to be free. We've built these huge networks. Whatever is going to be out there. So these revolutions have happened not because of the network, because humans can now communicate. You can't stifle it. You can't hide it.
Well, what about when you have something like the Great Firewall in China, where you really can stifle communication?
It'll break.
Where, you know,
Just give it time.
where
It's
It's breaking. It's breaking. It's a horrible place to go do business,
It's breaking down.
but it's breaking down.
but you know, but
I
still.
can't say anything more, because I have Chinese too. And I don't proclaim that I know the connections, so, but it's breaking down at the individual level, at the group level.
It's breaking down. Information wants to be free. It just wants to be free. People like communicating. This isn't a bad thing. It benefits. Benefits are small.
Seriously, right? I mean, when you put the word human in there, the one we're discussing about, are you going to tell us anything about human behavior, sociology,
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
orders? Because
No.
that's what it's all about, right?
I think it is. I think it is.
Everything you describe is essentially a derivative of human behavior, which we understand the least.
We understand the least. Yeah.
Why don't we get people in the US to come into STEM?
Come on, what?
What we try to do in the school? Why don't we get kids in America to come to science, mathematics, and engineering? Why? We have the least proportion of our population coming to this area versus other countries we compete against.
I believe it's because of the family. When I grew up, there was no doubt that I had to get a PhD. Like my father, there was very little ambiguity in that. I fought it for years. You know this. I fought it for years. But there was no ambiguity. Well, why are you guys going to school? When I was here, I was like the token American.
It's worse now.
Yeah, like, you can look around this room. It's horrible. Horrible. So all these problems come down to humans working together, whether it's communication, whether it's making the world a better place, it's the participation. And I don't think that the problem is building a faster network. I think the problem is how do we start to get human beings to participate in education and making the environment better and all this stuff. And I will challenge everyone that this is the greatest problem we should be working on. And figuring out how to make this more repeatable to get these humans to spend 3 hours making the world a better place or working on something interesting. There's been lots of little experiments so far, but nothing big and massive. I don't know if you guys have seen Fold It from the University of Washington. It's amazing, getting people that don't know anything about AIDS or biology to work on this game that they're actually trying to come up with new amino acids to solve AIDS. Look at problems like the ESP challenge out of Carnegie Mellon, where they get human beings, computer vision and object recognition, really hard computer problem. Human beings, fast. Make them play a game, they're on it. And all of a sudden we've figured out how to get humans into this loop and solving problems. But they're all small numbers.
Get the labs that they have created around the world from the bits and atoms set.
But they're small numbers. They're small numbers. Look, probably the most successful example of this is the Mechanical Turk, in which we pay people to do small tasks that are very difficult for computers. All estimates showed it's about 5,000 FTEs, full-time employees. Right? If you look at all the micro time from all the people, 5,000 out of what, 7.1 billion people? That's pittance. It's pittance. So the number one problem we have is how to get this participation.
What about Wikipedia?
How about what?
Wikipedia.
Wikipedia, what, how many people collaborate?
Right.
If you look at the people that really control it, it's probably less than 100. the top level
And
editors.
I also think it exemplifies one of your problems, that the number of editors per user is going down, right?
Yeah, so like so production consumption systems. Do you eat?
Yeah.
Do you grow food?
No.
There you go.
Yeah.
Are you a writer?
Yes.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Do you read? Like if you look at every single production consumption system, there's always fewer producers than there are consumers. Anyway. So I think this is going to be exaggerated or exacerbated two other ways. How many domains are out there? What?
Millions of what?
Internet domains. So no one's paying attention because it was on one of my prior slides. So you guys all failed the test.
100 and something.
It's 200 million, roughly. How many apps are there out there? Right, we're talking about apps on these devices.
500,000.
500,000. Close to 1 million on Android and close to 1 million on Apple iOS. Right? So think about the fragmentation. Remember the largest television event ever was what? It was what, the last episode of MASH. Why? There was like consolidation of like, there's 3 networks. You had 1 in 3 chance of like garnering someone's attention. Now we got 200 million domains, 2 million apps. What's the probability of getting anyone to participate? Right, but yet there are leaders out there, you know, Facebook with 500 million active users every day. Right, so someone's figuring it out.
I think it makes people produce what they need to eat.
They have to. If they don't, they die.
No, but seriously, that's a serious question, because most of that's why I asked you to go to this table. Most of the table you had were what they use the internet is, in my judgment, for no productive use of their time.
Yep.
Because if I'm a human, the first thing I will take care of is producing enough food to eat for me and my family. If I go down premium, okay? And are we going to do that? Or are we going to just go completely to this entertainment service?
Well, the way
sector,
we produce
and
that
then-
is we found other ways to create wealth so
Yeah,
we can pay someone else
Well,
to
that's
create
my
that.
problem. Wealth is my problem. And how it's distributed and what wealth means and what is that? Can the internet play a role?
I think the internet is playing a huge role on it right now.
In a positive way, or?
I think in a positive way.
It's making the field more skewed.
I think it's a very positive way. I think things like Etsy are amazing. If you look at it, anyone familiar with Etsy? Yeah. Anyone who makes handmade goods can go there and make a marketplace. This is why I think the marketplaces are amazing. Are you guys familiar with Uber? Yeah. Great. Guess what? Hey, sit down with one of those drivers. They're making more money today than they did 5 years ago. Airbnb, another one. Great. Like these are new marketplaces of allowing people to actually see more wealth and make their life better.
What you said is, and there are books about this, in the age of information, right, the economic thing, because information actually gets more value if it's being used versus other things. If I have my car and I let you use it, that is value. If I have information that you will
But if you give me,
all right, so my question again, and I'm going to pound on this, and I still haven't actually very that question. How do we take this explosive growth of the internet and the multiple networks and make people more productive, individually as a person, and their basic fundamental needs? That, to me, is up.
I agree. I actually agree 100%.
I don't want to come back and see a graph like you said, where the gains have gone from 25%, 50%.
I'm not convinced. Guess what? Anyone played with Luminosity? Luminosity is amazing. Games designed to make you smarter or at least quicker and not lose your cognitive abilities. Great. Right now, our 2nd grade and 3rd graders all have iPads, and we use, instead of looking and using that math notebook to do your homework of like, 7 times 22 and all this, they have games. The kids actually play these games and feel more interactive and happier about working on their math skills.
In the kids that are actually great.
They better be able to do that too. But like, I actually, like, when I look at games, I'm not convinced that they are 100% evil. I think that these things are, we have to think about the social.
I didn't say that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know.
I'm very careful.
I know you are.
Anyway.
So anyway, huge fragmentation. And so anyone who actually wants to garner any significant chunk of this new world is going to be challenged with how to build it. When I look at the difficulties there's so many new disciplines that need to come into play. It's not just computer engineers, computer scientists, psychologists, sociologists, HCI. And I'm not actually seeing these types of departments or kids coming out with this knowledge, mostly because this is all being done in companies now where we sit down and we try to figure out what works and what doesn't and run these experiments as fast as possible. John is not allowed to answer this question. What are these two graphs? One's a random network. In fact, the answer's right there. One's a random network and one's a scale free. You guys see those graphs? Which one should we build?
None. You come from the Baras school, you came to the wrong place.
Which one should I build? Which one should I build?
Something criteria.
Yeah,
What's your criteria?
I want to bring human beings together. They're going to have connections between the two. Which ones do I want?
What are your constraints?
I have no, I'm going to build a new system. I want to bring human beings together. I need to make a design.
Then everybody should be connected with everybody else.
No.
No constraint.
Yeah.
If you bring something that is an extension of small graph, it's called expander graphs.
I can tell you this, that the wrong answer, there's no right answer. The wrong answer is a random network. Right? Anyone know why?
So what is this thing?
There's only one wrong answer. You do not create a random network.
So it's just because smaller average distance is still free, just because it's log versus log.
That's mathematical. Yes, that's true.
Well, one measure, okay.
One measure is the
One
diameter
measure
of a graph.
One measure of collaboration.
Yeah.
Is, the average distance between people you meet somebody you collaborate with.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why small world became famous.
Yeah.
But that's not a property that you are the source, right?
Well, small world gets closer to scale free.
No way.
Okay.
Mathematically proved.
Okay. I don't actually think it matters, except for that if you build a random network, it will not grow. It grows too slow, your company will go out of business. If one single node goes out, you're done. And so, when you look at these large networks, they've all gone towards a scale-free network in some kind of like approach. Let's look at a couple examples. What's Twitter versus Facebook in the beginning? Use the beginning. You were at Twitter, you don't know?
One is directing and another is indirecting.
Yeah, exactly, right?
So how do you establish the fact that some statistical percent you go to the scale free?
Yeah. How do we, we're just actually running and seeing other people joining and staying.
And you understand the semantic recovery thing?
No.
Because there are
No,
multiple
we do
semantic
not
recoveries,
understand those at all.
Right?
I will walk you through why we don't.
Things may mean about things. Right?
They mean something completely different.
Sorry to be so argumentative.
Are you not? This is why like need smart people coming out so they can work on these problems. So preferential attachment, resilience to network failures. So if I had a random graph and you and I were friends, and then all of a sudden you guys became friends, and I wanted to communicate to you, but you decided not to use this network, now all of a sudden the network fell apart. And it turns out the number of connections, bidirectional connections, to and fro is very limited because we can only have so much information input. So if we actually connected every human being up to every other human being, the information overload would be insane. Even if it was just 1 bit a day. So it's just not going to work. The other reason is humans just want less friction. They just like, it's too hard. Like, hey, are you gonna like connect with me? It's just much easier to have it one way. Social engineering 101. But yet,
Around
1950, but we keep learning it over and over and over again. Let's walk through some examples.
Yeah, but we're also changing. So that's interesting. Now it's interesting.
Facebook. What is this? This is 2008. So, Dr. Baras, 1950. Right? We knew this in 1950, and yet we're still learning it again. They lift the 5,000 friend limit. Why? Because the graph was not growing as fast in the ways they wanted it to grow. They'll say there's some technical issues, but I guarantee they had enough compute power and ability to do it. Let's look at another example. Now, they decide you can no longer just have the choice of only to the people that you are complete friends with, but I can now broadcast out. Why? Because we want this to be more scale-free, a pub-sub model, than one-to-one connections.
But they introduced grades.
They did, because
For
you're...
that reason. So I have close friends, less close
Yeah,
friends.
it's insane. It's insane.
No, it's not the same. It actually says that it's not just any connection, but it's not. I have several groups of connections and I value them differently. That is a manifestation of the fact that in these things there are ways.
There are, but also the real reality is they don't care about those things. What they care about is, are they keeping people? Any company.
Oh, I have
Any company.
The home question comes at the end. Black and white here.
Any company cares about growing that graph and making sure those people are engaged. It doesn't matter whether they're selling widgets, Legos, it doesn't matter. And so what they start looking at is, how do I open this up and make more and more connections so people can actually have preferential attachment and find other nodes and get data and get value from my network. And so any way I can do, any system I can do to start getting people to self-organize and cut down the barriers are gonna work. All right, so this is 2009. Guess what, there's a guy named Dave Warren who is product manager doing this, leaves and starts at a company called PATH. Anyone heard of PATH? Okay? Here's Dave.
I have been taught also.
So, Dave, 50 is the perfect number of friends. Okay, so he builds PATH. It's all about your close connections, right? Graph's not growing. Not growing at all. What's his next move?
Does it matter?
Yes, it does, but you can't sustain your company. If you don't have more and more users
Coming
coming
closer to
in,
my question.
yeah, the economics just don't work.
It's worse than that.
Okay.
I will use an uglier word.
Okay. Okay, now they've moved it up to 150. Right? Over and over. You can walk through every one of these networks. And what they've realized is the random graph, the tight connections don't work. Right? They just don't work. We've known this since the 50s, and yet every single company goes and learns this again. Why? We don't teach it in school. We don't drill it into people. And we haven't thought about human engineering.
Professors and students talk about it.
Maybe it's because people don't read.
Well, they can't read. Like, we've already proven that fact. Like, most of them can barely like read
Say
stuff.
business forever, right? Is that what you're telling us?
You are gonna, your education is not going away. You're guaranteed. And that's about as far as science goes. Right? We can sit down, we can look at these graphs, we can analyze the properties, and then all of a sudden, the science of building these networks of people interacting and collaborating falls apart.
No,
Totally does.
I have 5 days to study.
All right, you show it to me.
Not just by me, by others.
All right.
And we'll discuss it.
We will. I'm here to learn. I mean, I always have selfish needs. I feel like coming and doing a talk like this, I'm gonna learn more than probably you guys are gonna learn from me. And that's my goal.
The word collaboration means we mutually that.
We both, but you know, we
We
can.
believe that here.
I want to learn a lot. I'm still learning. I've come down to believe that there are 2 important things that we really need to understand when we build these products. And when I wrote these slides, it morally offended the very backbone of me writing them. Because they're not science. Your product, the system you're about to build, has to hit 3 important things: clear utility, social currency, and social proof. If you do not build that in, your human network will not grow, will not sustain, period. Does anyone know what these words mean?
That's not the question.
So, yeah, exactly.
The question is what each one of these metrics will that value?
Clear utility. So we talked about fragmentation. 200 million domains, at least 2 million apps, and that number is just growing, continuing to grow. So fragmentation. So how often, how are you actually going to show someone that they should join or be part of a new network? They see no value. They have to have clear utility. A friend of mine is a great product manager, lays it out and says, look, if they don't understand it in 4 seconds and love it in the next 4 seconds, you've lost them forever. How do I build systems? This is not repeatable.
If you can make a biological analogy, right? I mean, there are mutations that in place all everyone else don't survive.
Right. Well, I want to build more companies. I want to like bring people together, and I want to make it repeatable and understandable, so I can do another one.
You cannot be lucky every time.
Well, that's why we have science. We're not luck.
Right.
Like the reason we're all here is not for. We're trying to fight
to
one.
do with sun. If I go back to a common genetic Baras, right? That sometimes I think that's too early.
They are sometimes too early, but I want to make this more repeatable. I really do. Social currency. So everyone wants to look great. They want to look important. And all of us use information as a form of currency. So I'm going to tell you about this cool new thing that I love. Right? I know about it, you don't. I'm going to look great. You are going to want it now. But if you don't get that, then you're just not going to use this product. You're not going to go give it this clear utility test. Social proof. So anyone heard of Instagram? Maybe some people have. I don't know. I mean, I live in a bubble, a weird bubble.
No, you did the practical real thing. That's why it wasn't 10 years ago.
Okay, so how many Instagram pictures had you seen before you went and signed up? 0.
Because you haven't signed up either.
It's about Russia.
5. Number's probably higher. LinkedIn.
I don't use them, but
Yeah, LinkedIn was 3 emails from other friends before someone would sign up.
For my kids, it's about that time. I had to do the opposite. I had to-
Yeah, you have the opposite problem.
I had dead mornings for them. I had to
But guess what? Like, these are the 3 things. Guess what? They're not technical problems. They're about getting other human beings to talk about it, to showing real value, because we're all so strapped for time, and that we really have to do this. Otherwise, you're not going to grow the system. How do I engineer this? How do I make this more repeatable? This one was a horrible slide when I wrote it. Happiness. This is what I've learned about happiness. That every one of these systems nails at least one or more of these points. It's got to make yourself have real value to you inside. Like, you have to be really happy about using this thing. Second, it has to be value to a close set of people that you actually care about their opinions. And third is you need to have some value to a larger group. Have you guys heard about Nest?
The first.
We heard a lot
The
about
thermostat.
We heard a lot about activity. Like impact factor.
Yeah.
And citation indices.
Yeah.
And games around citation indices.
Yeah.
And games around the impact factor.
So Nest. Anyone have a Nest? You walk by, it's got a sensor on it. It kind of glows. It's really cool. You can control your house. A lot of great value. It makes me feel good every time I see it. Amazing. Guess what? I feel great because I also know that there are hundreds of other Nests. They're now controlling energy and lowering it in aggregate. So I feel really great. And guess what? Every time someone comes over and they see it, I feel really great because guess what? I can tell them about this cool new thing.
You know the problem with NES, they apply to the connectivity network?
No, I
It's
don't.
called massive instability.
I'm not familiar with
Because
it.
we all, one of the uses that people envision in NES is to try to tell you when to turn things on and off, save energy.
Yep.
Well, if also this is based on prices you get predictabilities, and a lot of people do that, and then they switch back and forth, you see what's happening, right? You have two real-time systems, the utility adaptation to price, and the individual thing on and off machines, and there are now theorems that they say, don't do this slowly enough, they're gonna get massive instabilities, which means what? Blackout.
Interesting.
I mean, that problem's been solved in the past, right? Like, that's the thermostat problem essentially itself, right?
No. The thermostat is a slow system.
Yeah, in general, it's
Yeah,
a
but you,
short cycle.
but it's the same issue, right? Like, you hook it up, you just have to add dampening effects and you get it
The
over.
moment you put these distributed systems interact, the main point here is that these networks are fantastic. The moment you have social networks interacting with technological networks, one has to be careful about speed, time constants, and so on and so forth. You still have to do the work harmoniously for the benefit of both. You and I will pay less energy, less price, right? But if we're not careful and we don't understand the parameters, right? We may end up actually paying more, only before that, not have electricity for 2 hours. That's the point. This can be proven by experiments and by theory. That's one example.
So I believe that those problems are solvable.
Of course, but by analysis, not by just growing energy. Sorry.
Ben is the only one who's happy about my happiness slide. You had a question?
Yeah, so you were talking about the Nest and how it provides value to yourself, to people close to you, how you get to talk about it, how other people like it. So isn't this just marketing but on another level? So I think most of the problems you define are just marketing problems, but in a different domain.
I think that
social
the
network.
concept of marketing and trying to convince you of the value of something is very similar, but I think that the marketing approaches no longer work. If you look at the bigger companies that are trying to come out, they're not trying to market in that way. They are trying to market via other human beings. The best marketing is from other people that tell you that this is valuable to you, that you trust.
Yeah.
And so,
Traditional business owners used to say that all the time, right? They used to be like, okay, so people will talk about me.
but now we're connecting everyone.
Yes, now that they can do it so easily also.
It's not easy. It turns out it's not easy.
No,
it's
people
not
talking
easy.
about it, I'm saying.
Oh, talking
You
about
like
it,
it, like
we
you
can talk about
like
it.
the product.
Easy to talk about it. In fact, I'm talking about it. I don't know how to do it. I'm telling you, this like confounds me because I want to figure out how to build systems that have these properties, and I don't have a systematic, repeatable way that I can keep doing this. Right? That's why we have science, right? What are the tenets, like repeatable experiments? And I don't have a system in which I can like crank through these things and actually figure it out. It's kind of like, you know, the Supreme Court, pornography. We know it when we see it. That's tough. I know a great thing and I want to tell someone about when I see it. Like I want to like repeat that process and build lots of them. So, why this talk? This is probably the least networked talk ever. But the reason is that I think that connecting human beings together in new and interesting ways is the engineering challenge. It's not the technology behind how to get those like devices communicating. I know we can figure that stuff out. I don't know how to self-organize 1 million or 100 million people to work on AIDS or poverty. I don't know how to build those systems. And that's what I think as a human race, we need to look at how we can collectively solve problems in a large scale. And so that is what I think is going to fundamentally change. Internet's going to change drastically in the next 10 years. Maybe you believe my arguments, maybe not. We're going to go from 2.5 to 5 or 6 billion people connected. Information's going to flow, but how are we actually going to bring these people to solve big problems and do amazing things? So I think there's going to be more and more education around it. I think we need to make this stuff repeatable, and I would like to see departments stem up that actually are trying to figure this out and not done behind closed doors and every single company relearning all these like techniques. That's it.
So we have time for questions.
Can drop the bomb.
And Any
Should I sit down for that ball?
questions?
You know, you mentioned you're looking for the next thing to do and so on and so forth. I'm curious about when you started your company that ended up getting merged with Twitter. What was the drive to do that? Which you mentioned that you had.
I thought three things were important and the world needed: real-time search, sentiment analysis, and summarization. Felt that there was too much information out there, that it was flowing in too fast, and that you needed to summarize it down and really understand people's opinions about things.
Right.
It's really easy to count. It's hard to say, I like, I hate, this is good, this is bad. And so there's so much information, how do you filter that
So
down?
it's data versus information or data versus knowledge.
Knowledge.
Yeah.
Data is easy.
Yeah.
Counting is actually hard at scale, but it's a tractable problem.
No questions? Good? Okay, go ahead.
Yes. You said that you'd like to see people collaborating for real problems. In the past, they were, for example, blogs. How do you think that you can connect, for example, blogs with something more massive, like Twitter, for example, or using, for example, a framework where many blogs they can be inside, and
I don't
people
know.
of interest?
I don't know, I think
That's a good trigger. I mean,
it is a great trigger. So if you look at Ab Williams, he's one of the founders of Twitter. He started Blogger, and he's working on a new company, Medium, and they're really trying to figure out ways to get people to collaborate, to write, so the quality is up, and for people to really start to understand good topics and collaborate and bring it together and have more of a collaboration in blogs. I don't know. I haven't been thinking about that way. But I would go see some of the stuff he's working on, or go build it yourself. I love people going to build stuff.
Yes?
Like, how would you suggest navigating government intervention? Like, you had mentioned Uber and how it makes people better off generally, but like, I think in New York City, like the taxi cab union was trying to suppress it.
San Francisco, Washington, D.C., almost every market they've gone into, monopolies have tried to stop them. In fact, my Uber driver last night, I get off the train, he's complaining because guess what? D.C. has a law that says you should have a manifest. Turns out they have an electronic manifest. The law doesn't say whether it can be electronic or paper. In fact, it doesn't even say it has to be a piece of paper. And the taxis are trying to use this to stop this. Why? Because they're making money. It's in their interest to not open up new marketplaces. But every time these types of scenarios play out, the consumer always wins in the long run. People aren't going to stand up for it when, like, there's bad services. It's just going to go away. Like, it's going to be a time. But, government is a tool for us, and then if it's not making our lives better, that's our fault.
And I think that, I mean, you point out the exact answer. It's not the government in this case. It's concerted interests that have been around for a long time that have happened to get these things codified into law, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same groups of interests that can then overturn those laws, right,
Yeah.
and change them.
It's gotten slowed down a couple times because of actually social media in DC, because people stood up and said, no, cabs aren't doing the job. We want another solution. What's the problem here? And guess what? Every time when you put this flashlight on like these kind of like special interest groups, they kind of scurry off like cockroaches. But they'll come back and turn off the lights, but just change it.
Question. So, like, you're obviously interested a lot in education, right? So, what do you think of the massive educational efforts in this space, like connected efforts like Khan Academy and the MOOCs that are out there, like Coursera? And
I think they're great. So when I look at education, it's fundamentally going to be really, really hard. We talk about like just literacy, right? Basically, I can read some stop signs, like I can get around in life. But the higher levels, look at India. We have 25 million people coming into the middle class every year. How do we build the buildings to even educate those people? I don't even care about the education. How do we build the buildings? Can we build those fast enough? I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible to really educate the next 3 or 5 billion people to the college level in any time soon. I don't know if we can physically do it. So anything that's moving this to electronic or ways that we can distribute it are our only way forward.
So we don't need the buildings.
I don't know how to do it without them. But I'm saying, I don't think we can solve the problem that way.
So you have homes, you can learn.
Right, like I just like look at the amount of resources and like, can we afford it? Can we do it? I don't know. I think we gotta look for something else.
Any other questions?
You have a quick one. So in your slide, when you're talking about the amount of browser using on the phone, you kind of separate Facebook and social networking. Is there any particular reason why?
You know, it's weird. I don't know why they separate it out. Mostly because they want to say that Facebook is actually a very big gateway to the rest of the web.
And so Twitter would be in the social networking.
networking, yeah.
So only 6% compared to 18.
Maybe not. You know, I can say that Twitter's not using Flurry as their analytics system. So it's probably not.
Maybe it's time-based, because people spend less time on Facebook, more time on Facebook.
Yeah, they totally do. They totally do. I think like the usage on Facebook's like 2-3 hours a day, where like Twitter's probably like 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
How do you comment on Internet of Things, because we have been talking about Internet of Humans?
Internet of Things are amazing. I want, like, I'm hooking up a garage door to my cell phone. Like, I think that's amazing. It's great. I don't think that is, I think it's just going to make our lives better. I don't think it's going to be the revolution that is amazing. I think, like, hooking up 1 billion people together, let's, like, do one thing is going to be a real revolution.
I'm going to ask one question, that is two actually. Then I'm going to ask the wrong question.
Okay. So 3 questions.
Ben is here because Ben led an effort a couple of years ago to try to make science in communities. And he's still working on it. So
turns out it's a tough problem.
the question is this, right? In many of these things, right, integrity of knowledge and information is extremely important. And right now, this is a big problem because we get all kinds of information and we don't know the integrity. At the same time, Kenneth Arrow in '74, he said in a seminal article that trust is a lubricant for collaboration. Therefore, trust, okay, and the role of trust, whatever that means in this social network, is huge. And there are 2 ideas. So say you.
Well, I mean,
How do we build systems where the integrity of information has some chance of being checked? I want to find something about my health.
There's been a couple
I want to find something
papers.
about the subject in the course, all right? I want to find out what if the latest blog or news has any value or whatever. And you know, this can be gamed extremely.
Yeah, it's okay.
Or I want to collaborate with Ben, I want to collaborate with him. How do we build this into these things we build? Because you guys have gone and built the systems. And remember the fiasco with Facebook and the others on security and all that stuff?
It turns out it's a really hard problem.
And the young girl from India who actually didn't talk to her mother because several of her secrets went out. I mean, we have to address that because that's a very, very important part of what we call human networks.
Yes.
I can't resist, but absolutely. And there is a big effort in NSF, and I've just written about credible content. How do you ensure credibility? I think it is one of the major challenges for trust, because that is the lubricant.
Trust, reputations, you can.
Right.
I mean, you know, I go find a hotel.
Yeah.
It looks great. Then I found out that it's a crap when I go there.
Right.
And then I check back the recommendations I read, and I know they're filtered because what I saw.
Yeah, that's why it's all about social currency. It's the person who tells you.
Now the bomb question, okay, and you can take the feed from that.
No, I mean, come on. Trust is like, we have to trust all the
This is
information.
the bomb question.
Well, we should talk about this, but this is what we learned. This is what we learned in school, is that we bring in information, we think about it, we digest it, we see who it is, we validate.
There are serious.
Trust but verify.
There are
Trust but verify.
There are serious efforts in mathematics that
Right.
people are working on to try to understand these problems, and they can give you tools that what we need from you and other people like you and companies like you, yours and others, is data. Because without this data, as Ben will be the first to say, if this is going to be a science, there should be an empirical science.
I will say this. Here's my one spiel on data. I believe that science is about repeatable experiments and that there should be open data. But I also don't believe that the academic community has the balls to stand up to the companies and the American population and say, we demand this because the life will be better. The reality is, no one wants to give up the information because it might be their information.
Right.
And so they're not going to do it. And unless you're solving cancer or going to like cure dead grandmother or something, they are not going to do it. And the academic community is not going to stand up and ask for it either.
Okay, So,
Right, you will, but guess what? Here's the, I've had this over and over. A professor comes in and goes, I want your data, but I don't want any other schools to have the data. I have this over and over and over
I never
again.
said that.
You have never said that, but I've had this come.
There have been efforts that have been along. So the Library of Congress, right, has this Twitter data. Like, we've been trying for the last 3 years to get them to make that publicly available to everyone, all academic researchers. And they consistently keep turning it down because they simply can't find the funding, right? And we can't
Yeah, I know, I've
find
had
the
those
funding.
discussions with it, it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
ridiculous.
That's only the tweets, not the follower network.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
I understand, but the follower networks
That's the
actually
value.
irrelevant compared.
It's building the human graph that's hard.
And the
tweets.
follower networks are relevant compared to the reply and mention network,
Yeah.
and retweet and mention network.
Okay, so I'm gonna go on into this.
No, wait, is this the bottom? Well, let's
You
do the
have
bottom.
right? So Kenneth, I hope you know who Kenneth Arrow was, right? He is. Right?
Okay.
He's Nobel Prize winning economist, okay? He
Okay.
did very much in interplay between economics, sociology, and ethics. So I repeat what he said.
I'm gonna have a reading list.
Trust is a lubricant for collaboration, right?
Okay.
And then another famous economist, Meyerson, developed this theory of constraint coalition again to understand how people and other things connect and make a network by interplaying the benefits and the costs of collaboration and so on. So this can be a multi-variable mechanism. That's mathematics. Now, the real question. I'll go slow so you can understand it. Right? What, in your opinion, is the role of profit, okay, in providing education and healthcare to the system? I said it's going to be a bomb question, right? Because it's not just, my dear friend, about building large networks and make them grow and making money. It's about, is there a true value in education and healthcare so that you can get the people to understand the true value to themselves and then they will participate. And that, I do not know an answer, but it has to somehow be.
I don't
this
know the
equation,
answer
right?
either. I believe that there'll always be profit in there because it's the way we've come to value. If you give something to someone for free, they often don't value it. When my parents were paying for my education, I did not value it. When I was paying for it, it became incredibly valuable. But, you know, look,
I'm not saying it has to.
we've come up with economics as a way that human beings trade effort.
I'm not against this. It's just
I'm not against it either.
As you say, there has to be a bound on the number of friends. I think also there has to be some consideration about how much profit can be made in these two areas, education and healthcare, right? So that the common folks start understanding this in addition to whatever the companies make some real value for themselves. And I think this is not understood, honestly.
I don't think it
I
is.
mean, you know more than me.
No, you're very right. I don't want to.
That's a difficult question because I agree with you. If you don't allow profit, then you're not going to have companies that will create these tools. On the other hand, the tool folks are the
Well, they have to have profit so they can pay their people so they can, right? Like, these systems don't run for free.
My only basic answer is transparency. If you know how much profit, then there can be public outrage when it's successful. That's the mean. Openness, transparency are central to trust and to successful economic structures.
Now, a lot of the companies, people provide similar services, and they can compete on price, which is a form of that transparency.
Correct.
Right? It just takes time.
Right.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Right. Thank you very much. So I hope someone.